Hello and welcome to another one of your interviews on the Hormone Balance After 40 Summit. I am your host, Bridget Danner. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to our summit sponsors and our daily sponsors. And a reminder to you that you can own this summit, all the recordings and notes and a pile of bonuses. So check that out on this page. Check out that link and enjoy this interview. Dr. Ritamarie Loscalzo, welcome to the summit.
Well, thank you for having me here, Bridget. I'm excited to talk about this.
I'm happy to have you back. You were one of the favorite speakers on our last summit in 2016. And I know we talked about some things there, adrenals and blood sugar, that I think we can get deeper into on this talk about menopause and perimenopause, because those are important things to manage in this time of life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Big things. Big things.
So first I want to talk about you, though, because if you're watching the video right now, Ritamarie is just completely a lovely, gorgeous, energetic, she's going to blush, postmenopausal woman that honestly, like, people want to be like you as they age. You know, you have a very successful business, you're very bright, and I think some women feel like there's an inevitable loss they're going to go through at menopause of their vitality and their brain power and their waistline. So I know we're going to get deeper, but what would you say what are your personal secrets to staying young?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you so much for the compliments. I appreciate it. The thing is that we look at menopause as this time when things go downhill, and my experience with it is that my brain power increased, my drive increased, my energy. It's always been like this. So my energy increased a lot since I was 25, but my energy did not go down. But what I found is that I'm stepping into my power. And I think when we go through menopause, we step into this shift, not just hormonally, but it's life-wise. Most of us are not raising toddlers when we're going into menopause. I have a few friends who are, but those are the exception rather than the rule. You have more time for your own pursuits. True. Right? A lot of people are in an established relationship where if you are in an established relationship, then the relationship is kind of, it's there. You don't have to feel like you have to spend every moment with the person, and you've established yourself. And I felt like after menopause, I stepped into my power. My biggest business growth happened after I turned 50 and after I went through menopause. And it just keeps accelerating. And I'm 61. I should be like, I get to retire in 4 years. I'm like, retire? What the heck is that? Why would I want to do something silly like that? Right? I'm thinking I'm growing my business. How do I help more people? How do I get out there and also create space for myself so I have time to travel and enjoy my life? So I think that it's a great time, and we really have to see it differently. So I think that, like anything else in health, it starts with mindset. It starts with what you believe. If you believe that every year you get frailer and older and less energy, it's going to happen. And that's what we have been taught as a society in Western worlds. Oh yeah, you're 60, you're supposed to be. What did I do on my 60th birthday? I did 61 push-ups. Just right? Just because I wanted to prove that I'm not going downhill. And I won't go downhill. And the point is, like, you look at the Tarahumara Indians in South America. They believe that with every decade, we get older, we get wiser, we get stronger. And we may think about wiser. Oh yeah, old and wise, that's a phrase. But a lot of those folks, they think that, and they have these races, these like ultra marathon races from village to village. And what do you know? The 40-year-olds do better than the 30-year-olds. The 50-year-olds do better than the 40-year-olds. The 60-year-olds do better than the 50-year-olds. Why? Because they just believe it and they step into it, right? So I think it starts with belief. And I've always had this, not always, well, starting once I got over my old crap that I was carrying around for years. But I feel like, I can get better. Life is amazing, right? There may be some bad things happening in the world. There may be some bad thing happening in my family. But you know what? I'm just grateful to be alive. So I think that an attitude of gratitude and an attitude of feeling like it's just going to keep getting better. And if it's bad out there right now, so be it. We're just going to make it better in here and do our best to change out there, because inevitably we can't change it all. And we can get really depressed about what's going on out there. Right. But no, if we don't, and we look at the positive and we look at ourselves as getting better. Now, you may be going, well, that's easy for you to say because you feel great and all this, but I didn't always feel great. And so it's really that attitude, but it's also more than that. It's the habits. It's dietary habits. It's making time for yourself. I think as you go through menopause, you actually should have more time for yourself because you don't have the little kids to take care of and run around, And if you are approaching an age where you're feeling like you want to retire, great. You have more time to take care of yourself. And I think that self-care is so important, and choosing really amazing foods, whole, fresh, plant-based foods, mostly plants. What did the guy that wrote that book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, say? Don't eat so much and mostly eat plants. Right?
Sum it up just like that. Right. So, we're done.
Read the book. It's too long. Just sum it up. Don't eat too much and mostly eat plants. And the plants are brimming with so much stuff. And also, but the stress piece is so important, especially with menopause. Knowing that our adrenal glands, which take care of stress, steal away our sex hormones. Because what do we think as a survival of the species or the survival of me, which is more important, running away from tigers or having sex? Okay? Survival stems from running away from the tiger. And so we naturally lose our sex drive. Our sex hormones go down as we get into these stressful situations where we're running away from tigers 24/7. So for me, it's like good choice of food, regular exercise, daily appreciation practice, meditation practice, if you can do that, heart math, whatever thing gets you out of this state and into a more placid state. That's the formula for having tons of energy going into menopause.
I love it. I love your reframe that, there's so much potential at this time of life. Often women are doing better financially and things are more stable, and they can start to explore hobbies. Like you said, they have more time. So if you have your health, it's an amazing time of life. There's no reason for it not to be.
No reason for it not to be, right?
Yeah. So you've alluded to you kind of did your health turnaround a little earlier in life in your 20s. So I wonder if you could talk about, kind of before and after, and then how menopause was for you once you had set up those healthy habits.
Yeah, so I grew up on, Twinkies, M&Ms, ice cream, white pasta with meatballs, and nothing organic. We didn't know about organic, no fresh vegetables. Everything came from cans. And so when I hit my 20s, I was starting to feel the impact of it. Didn't know that it had anything to do with the food choices, just was feeling headachy and brain foggy and couldn't make it through the day without tons and tons of black tea and Diet Coke and stomach problems. And I went through the conventional medicine approach to, well, tell doctor, what's wrong with me, right? That's what we do. We turn our health over to this person who's supposed to know. And we say, tell me what's wrong and what should I do? And typically what they'll do is say, you have this, they put you in a box, you have this diagnosis, and we're going to give you that. And it's one of maybe 3 choices that they have for people in that box. So if the box is ulcers, we have one of these 3 medications for you to do. If your diagnosis is migraine headaches, there's one of these 3 medications to do, right? If you have gallstones, we're going to take out your gallbladder. It's actually quite a simple process to do. But that's what they were doing to me, and I wasn't getting better. It was like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Your tests work out okay. I don't know what's wrong with you. So I was functionally out of balance. I wasn't in a disease state. And that's what most people running around are in. They're functional imbalance, and that's where functional medicine comes in. So I got frustrated, and they said, you don't have an ulcer, and here's your ulcer medication. Just keep taking it because it's probably can't hurt. And I walked away frustrated, and I said, could it be my diet? And they laughed at me and said, of course not. And this was 1983 or something like that, 84, something like that. And there wasn't the internet. There weren't summits like this to actually educate and empower people. There weren't, huge shelves of information on natural healing and nutrition at the bookstore. There was this much, right? So I went and bought all of those books, and then I went to the library and got out more books and studied the chemistry and studied the anatomy and what is nutrition and what does it mean? It must be something going on. And I experimented for several years. getting a little better, a little worse, a little better, a little worse. Finally found some solutions when I really completely turned around my diet and I cleansed and I did a whole bunch of stuff to support my adrenal glands and blood sugar and all these other things. And I made a commitment back then that I'm just going to eat well for the rest of my life. I didn't say, wow, doc, thanks for the diet. How long do I have to follow this? Oh, I'm better now. The tests show up better. Good. I'm back to Cheetos. No, I decided I want to do it for the rest of my life. And that's where people go wrong, I think, a lot, whether it's in conventional medicine or functional medicine. They think that they do certain things to get a result. They get the results, and then they can go back and do those things again and expect to get a different result. And it doesn't work that way. I always allude to the person hitting themselves over the head with a hammer. If you're hitting yourself over the head with a hammer and the doctor gives you an aspirin to take, and you take the aspirin and the headache goes away, and then you say, great, and you go back to hitting yourself up over the head with a hammer, the headache's going to come back, right? Same thing with your diet and your nutrition. You go back to eating sugar, you're going to have a blood sugar problem again. You go back to this stressful diet, lifestyle, lots of pesticides, hydrogenated fats, etc. It's going to come back. The weight's going to come back. The imbalance is going to come.
Well, let's talk about the sugars, because I think in midlife is, well, we love sugar all in any stage of
Everybody
life,
loves it.
but I think we can kind of really dig into it in midlife because we're tired, because we're feeling moody. I think that, wine has become synonymous with midlife women because it's like a big escape, but man, it really can do a number on your gut, a number on your blood sugar. And it takes a change of lifestyle. Like you said, I love how you said you just dedicated, I'm doing this for life. It does take a change of lifestyle to recognize I'm stressed at the end of the day, or I have this habit at the end of the day. But you know what? I want to feel differently. So I'm going to do
That's
some
right. We want to change our state. Exactly. That's exactly why people overeat, eat just fatty, sugary foods, drink wine, smoke cigarettes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell us why blood sugar is so important in general to manage and why it's very important as we go through these hormonal changes.
Absolutely. So blood sugar, we have this sugar in our blood, and that's what the body uses to make energy. The sugar itself isn't the energy, but when the sugar gets into the blood and then gets into the cells can make energy in a part called the mitochondria. I love to say that word. I just love that word.
It sounds energetic.
It's these mitochondria. They're these little powerhouses, and they make this stuff called ATP. Wow, boom, ATP. I need a burst of ATP. Right? You don't hear people talking like that, but they basically make this, and that's what gives us energy. But if the sugar can't get into the cells, then the mitochondria can't make energy. And you're going to feel tired. Not only are you going to feel tired, but all your functions are going to be tired. Your liver function is going to slow down, which means you're not cleansing and detoxifying well. Your digestion is going to slow down, which means you're not digesting the foods that are coming in, and maybe you're constipated, right? Your cardiac function is going to slow down. It's going to be impaired. You're not going to be able to pump blood the way you should. Maybe the vessels get narrower, and we could talk about that in a minute, but that happens with blood sugar imbalance. The blood vessels get narrower, and then if you need a burst of energy and it's too narrow, the blood won't go through, and that's when people end up with cardiovascular accidents, strokes, and heart attacks. So we need to have the sugar into the cell for all of these pieces to be able to work. And what happens is when we eat sugar, we're not supposed to be eating pure sugar extracted from wherever it came from without the fiber, without the nutrients. And it gets into the bloodstream. The body at first knows just what to do. Produce a hormone called insulin. Insulin takes the sugar and shuttles it into the cells. The sugar can't get into the cells without insulin. So insulin shuttles the sugar into the cells, and we're happy, right? Even though we just ate something that wasn't very good for us. But over time, and sometimes not very long, because we're seeing more and more insulin resistance, which is what it's called when you can't get the insulin into the cells, in children. Used to be the only time you saw diabetes in a child was when they had type 1 diabetes, which is a whole different mechanism. Now we're seeing type 2, which used to be called adult onset diabetes, in children. And it's because we've bombarded the system with too much sugar, which then bombards the system with too much insulin. And then the cells go, wait a minute, too much insulin's damaging for me. So they become resistant. They put up a wall. They say, nope, sorry, we've had enough. And then what happens is the sugar builds up in the bloodstream. And that extra sugar in the bloodstream can be damaging to the peripheral nerves. We've heard of peripheral neuropathies that diabetics get. It can be damaging to the retina, the eyes, and people get diabetic retinopathy and they go blind from it, from the extra sugar. It causes damage to the little tiny nerves in the ears, and people have a loss of hearing. So all these things that happen with long-term diabetes are actually happening in everyone who's consuming this excessive sugar and having a lot of it extra in their blood. And then the insulin too, because the insulin builds up, right? The pancreas says, whoa, we got to get this sugar out of the blood. It's dangerous, right? Let's get it into the cells. The cells say no. So the pancreas says, oh, there's still high sugar. We must need more insulin. And it just keeps producing more and more insulin. The insulin levels go high. And then the insulin itself creates problems. It causes stiffening of the blood vessels. I told you I'd come back to those blood vessels. It causes stiffening of the blood vessels so that they're not going to be elastic. The blood vessels need to be elastic. I'm resting. I'm active, need more blood, I'm resting. And when they don't, then we get pressure. Blood pressure builds up because there's pushing against this vessel and it won't let me through. So the pressure builds up. And then we have damage that happens to the arteries. And that's underlying a lot of heart disease. So super important that you get this under control from the time you're born, basically, right? We should be managing this from the time we're little. Most of us have never knew that. I grew up on M&Ms and jelly beans and lots of cookies and candy, and Kool-Aid was our drink, our beverage of choice back then, which tons of sugar in this little whatever artificially colored flavored powder. Whew. I mean, I think about all the stuff I ate. I wonder how we're still alive. That's, I don't know. But that's why blood sugar is so important. And then the blood sugar is, it has to be maintained within a certain realm, a range. And when it goes above that, most doctors aren't going to tell you until it's diabetes. They don't tell you, oh, your blood sugar is a little high. Maybe we should get this under control now. And meanwhile, every single time that blood sugar goes up, those damages are happening. And it puts a big stress on the adrenals, but also the adrenals, when you're stressed, produce a hormone called cortisol. And what does cortisol do? In addition to stealing your sex hormones, cortisol also raises your blood sugar, because cortisol comes into play when we're going to be running away from a tiger, right? So what do you need to do to run away from a tiger? You need energy, right? And because the body, we know the mechanism is more sugar gets into the cells, more energy is made. In the wisdom that the body's created with, it says, oh, we're under stress. We need more sugar so we can create more energy. But then you have this insulin resistance pattern that's developed, and then the tiger's chasing you and you can't get away. Unfortunately, we're not in a situation where they're real tigers, or we'd all be dead.
There aren't that many tigers. There aren't enough tigers to get all of us.
So I want a wild dog, maybe, but usually it's on a leash and it's just a scare, right? But it's all those mental and emotional stresses, the finance stresses, the kids going to school stresses, the mold stresses, all these things that play in to physically and mentally stressing the body. That depletes, that causes insulin resistance and depletes our sex hormones. So why do you think people feel so crappy when they hit menopause? Because this has been happening for decades. They don't make enough of the sex hormones. So now they're going to menopause and the ovaries are shutting down. The adrenal glands actually make a fair amount of sex hormones. And they make enough that if you're in good health, when your ovaries shut down, the adrenal level is just enough to keep you happy. Not enough to make you pregnant, but enough to keep you happy, right?
Yeah.
Which is actually a source of pleasure too in older years, because you can have a lot of fun without worried about becoming pregnant if that's not what you want. So there's all kinds of really cool things about going into menopause if you go in with your health in a really good level.
Nice. Yeah. So you mentioned the adrenals a little bit. They need to work during menopause, and I know they go through work to manage our blood sugar for spiking it up and down throughout the day. That was like a big revelation to me when I started getting into functional medicine. I was like, oh, it actually really stresses out my body to eat that cupcake. It's, it's not just naughty. It's really,
it's stressing you out big time.
Something's happening. So let's talk about how we can keep our blood sugar even throughout the day.
Good. Well, I always like to talk about I talk about 5 different areas that you look at, because most people say, oh, blood sugar, let's just talk about food. And it's not just about food. So it's about food, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But it's the food, it's fitness, it's moving the body, not over-exercising like people who are training for marathon after marathon after marathon. That's stressful, and that creates hormonal imbalances as well. So fitness, movement throughout the day. I like to do short bursts. I have my little stair stepper right next to my desk, and I get in there and I do it. I stand. You can tell I'm standing. I'm standing on a pad. It's called a Wurf board. And I can actually do these little exercises while I'm typing away or talking. I try not to do it too much when I'm on an interview so I don't distract people, but I move, just little bursts of movement, and that really helps dramatically. Stress management, huge, right? We got to get that under control. I call it the cortisol, the candy bar eating effect of cortisol. And so when you get really like, oh, it's really mad and I'm really upset, it raises your blood sugar as if you just ate a candy bar.
Yeah.
Like, really? You didn't get the pleasure of eating the candy bar, but now you've got a blood sugar issue as if you did? Right? So that, and then sleep is super important as well. And I know most people are sleep deprived, not because, some of them because they don't go to bed, but a lot because they have trouble falling asleep because of the stress, because of all the worries, because of the bad food, because of eating too close to bed. And so getting sleep under control is super important. But finally, it's timing of all of those. And I can go back to the nutrition by talking about timing, because breakfast is super important for people who are in this state, and making sure that you don't start the day with carbs. And what do people typically start with? Orange juice and toast, or a croissant, or various cereals. Those are all high carb. That throws the blood sugar off right from the beginning. We're like demanding all this insulin, which throws off another hormone called leptin, which controls your appetite. It says to your body, oh, I don't need this. And then you become leptin resistant. So no matter how much you eat or how much fat you have, you're hungry. What the heck is happening? And then they're all tied together. So when you don't sleep enough, your leptin levels are off. And it increases a hormone called Ghrelin, which gets secreted by your stomach. Wrong side, stomach, and you get secreted by the stomach and says, I'm empty, I'm hungry, and it increases that level and decreases leptin. So when you don't sleep enough, you're walking around hungry all the time. And so the blood sugar management is so important. And when you start the day with a good breakfast with some good quality protein, plant protein or animal protein, as long as it's clean animal protein, but I like to start it with plant protein. And I start there and I eat tons of greens throughout the day, lots of green leafy vegetables loaded with antioxidants and minerals. And when you can do that and time your meals at least 4 hours apart instead of eating every 2 hours, we take away some of that stress. And we actually make it easier for the body to heal, to get the hormones in balance, and to sail through menopause.
So if someone right now is a big snacker, eating all day, should they go right to this 4 hours between meals?
You gotta move slowly with it. Okay. So here's what happens if you don't go 4 hours between meals. Insulin gets secreted when, like we talked about before, when there's a blood sugar demand. And insulin is what's called an anabolic hormone. It stores fat. It turns off fat burning. So if you're walking around with some extra fat you want to burn and you're eating every 2 hours, you're constantly in fat storage mode and never in fat burning mode. So it's super important. But when people go, suddenly they are eating every 2 hours and they suddenly try to go 4 to 6, if they do it too quickly, then it causes a problem because they're not used to eating that often or waiting that long, and they don't have the mechanisms in place to keep them from going into this emergency situation of their blood sugar plummeting, and then the adrenaline and the cortisol come out and the adrenals get all stressed out. So what I also tell them, though, is Ghrelin, which is a hormone secreted by the stomach, it actually causes you to be hungry. And if you can ignore it for 15 to 30 minutes, what happens to Ghrelin is it actually stimulates growth hormone. So growth hormone's like cool for putting down muscle and growth and repair and burning fat. So I always tell people, when you have some hunger, instead of running it off and eating right away, just enjoy your hunger going, oh boy, I'm going into fat burning now. Yay. And deal with it. Don't make it into an emergency where you're feeling like you're going to pass out, but go 15 to 30 minutes beyond when you start to get hungry. So wait till you get hungry and go 15, 30 minutes. If you're used to eating that often, just do it 15. And then, the next time go for a half an hour, and then just spread it out little by little. But the kinds of results that I've seen people get by spreading out their meals have been dramatic. If you start to feel like if you spread your meals out, you're starting to get palpitations, sweaty, that's a sign that the adrenals are kicking in. So you need to just back off a little bit. Don't wait that long.
Interesting. I know it took me a long time to get out of the frequent eating, frequent hungry thing. I think that one thing that helped me is when I played around with doing more of like a ketogenic, I wasn't fully going there, but like a high fat diet. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. My big thing for breakfast is we need to have a decent amount of fat and a decent amount of protein, but also a whole bunch of green vegetable type stuff. Because the mistake a lot of people make is they go into breakfast and they go, oh yeah, they want high protein breakfast, high fat breakfast, and they go for bacon and eggs. There's no antioxidants there. There's hardly any minerals or vitamins there. It's not a diet that's going to make you feel great for hours. So I always have people start with something green, whether it's a green juice, a green smoothie, a green shake, a salad, steamed vegetables, something like that, with something fatty. So I usually go for like a chia porridge or a cashew yogurt or a combination or hemp milk or something like that, a plant-based fat. And then a good protein. Well, all of those things have good protein. Hemp seeds are a great source of protein. For some people, a protein shake, a protein powder. And not that I'm a big fan of powders. I like real food. But a lot of times when people are in a state where their digestion is a mess, they don't absorb real food very well. So we just give them what they need. And when you can start the day that way, you end up going much longer. The breakfast I just described, that's a good 6-hour breakfast before you get hungry again.
I love it. I love how you said, if you eat bacon and eggs, yeah, that's great, but where are the antioxidants? That's a great point. It's a great way to look at it. And I think it can be a missing food group when we think, oh, I'm going paleo. So I want to get into some tips, because I know like throughout the day you're doing a lot of things, you're working a lot, but you're managing to eat healthy and take little elixirs or little tinctures, or what are some tips you have for like busy women who are like, I want to get more greens, but I don't know how to do it?
Yeah, I was looking to see. I thought I still had one here, but I finished it. I start my day with this green drink, and it's a green smoothie, so to speak, but it's really like this really yummy tasting blend of greens with cucumbers and celery and all kinds of greens and ginger and turmeric, right? I'm getting a lot of good antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, have an avocado in there, or I might put hemp seeds in there, something for a good source of fat. And it's easy to drink. I mean, I don't eat salads until I can sit down, because I don't have time throughout my busy day to sit down and eat a salad. So I blend them up, or I eat something that's easier to handle, or I put my salad in a wrap. I love those paleo wraps. And I put a whole bunch of lettuce and sauerkraut and sprouts and, maybe some sort of a nice tahini sauce or something, roll it up and then eat it that way like a sandwich, because it's much easier to do. Not that we're supposed to eat on the run. We're actually not supposed to eat on the run, right? But the fact of the matter is we have busy lives, so we want to do our very best. So I start the day that way, and then I make it easy for myself. I make elixirs. I love my elixirs. I'll put in some adrenal supportive herbs or blood sugar balancing herbs in my elixirs, and I'll put in, maybe some coconut and chia seeds and some sort of good tea, like a licorice tea or a gynostema tea or one of these herbs that are really good and supportive of the body. And I make this delicious drink, and people love my elixirs. Like, they go crazy over the elixirs because it's so easy, and it's so easy to put in this nutrient dense stuff. Make hot chocolate, which is kind of like a coffee beverage in the morning. I'll put cordyceps mushroom with some coconut milk powder, and I just pour hot water over it. Put a pinch of chocolate stevia in it. Now I have hot chocolate. And if people really like the coffee taste, then you can get chocolate drops in it. I mean, coffee drops without the caffeine, because caffeine is just going to propagate the problem. So that's what I love to do. And those elixirs I have a chart that is in my little elixir book that has, okay, what are some of the herbs you can put into these elixirs if you want to support your adrenals, if you want to support your sex hormones, if you want to support your immune system, your liver. And it's just like, oh, okay, I'll just make this simple little drink that's like replacement for my hot beverage that's comforting. Right? We started at the beginning with comfort. That's why we go for food. We go for food for comfort. But we really should be going for it for nutrition. But we go for it at the end of the day. That wine or that chocolate candy or whatever we're having at the end of the day is for comfort.
It sounds like you're trying to find some of the same satisfaction. And I think when you're changing your habits too, to be like, okay, I'm having, maybe you used to have your morning like mocha or something, but now you're having your like morning, what did you call it? Mocha elixir. There
right?
you go.
You can get that taste with a lot of the medicinal mushrooms have that bitter kind of coffee type flavor. And there's all kinds of little flavor extracts that are just pure, like extracts, like vanilla extract. You can get coffee extract. And so you can actually have it, but have it be a beverage that's going to sustain you and nourish you throughout the day.
Nice. I think you're giving, I'm skipping ahead a bit, but I think you're giving as a free gift for participants a hormone elixir guidebook, right?
Yep, a hormone elixir guidebook, and that chart is in that book.
Okay, so we'll get all those tips, so we won't dive into those too much. But what was I just going to think about asking you for? Oh, I know I want to ask you about weight management. So we've talked a lot about blood sugar, and I love how you tied in some of these things we think of as, you know, natural to come in old age, like, oh, I'm losing my hearing, I'm losing my vision, oh, my heart is having a problem. But actually, this is a lot of problems with sugars. And I think with weight at mid-age, with loss of estrogen, there can be a change in like weight distribution, a change in metabolism. I think we're going to have a couple speakers talk about that. But you've definitely really managed to keep at a healthy, slim weight, and you were in good habits. It was probably easier. Maybe you could share the story of some clients you've had that have had changes in their weight with managing their sugars.
Yeah, I have one very dramatic story, and she'd already been through menopause. She was 65 when she came into one of my blood sugar balancing programs, and she'd been told she was pre-diabetic. Her blood sugar was 119, but she was saying, don't worry, honey, come back in 6 months and we'll check. And if you're diabetic, we'll put you on some medication. And she was like, what? Huh? That doesn't make any sense. So she found me, she got into my program, she started doing it. But now she was 65, she was 110 pounds overweight. And she'd had a hip and a knee replacement a year ago. So the doctors had said, look, honey, at your age with the knee and hip, oh, and by the way, your pituitary shut down. So in addition to having Hashimoto's and been on thyroid medication for 50 years, they had recently put her on cortisone because of her pituitary wasn't working. They said her pituitary was shut down and we had to actually give you cortisone so your adrenals would work. And she was a mess. High blood pressure medication. And so she decided to do my program, and she did it. She did the food. She did the stress management. She meditated. She did some little burst training. She walked around the block a lot. She got her sleep under control, and her diet she changed dramatically. Got off the gluten, got off the sugars, just really changed her diet dramatically. And over the time we worked together, she's lost and maintained the loss of 110 pounds. Wow. She also, yes. And within just a short period of time, like a window of like, I think it was 3 months, she'd lost 55 of it.
Oh my gosh. Right? Wow.
Yes. And so she went back to this doctor, and the doctor said, like, oh, what's going on with you? I'm just following this plan. She said, well, let's rerun your test. Get off all your medication. This was brave of the doctor. Go off all your medication. Come back in a month. We'll retest you. So she's off her thyroid or off her pituitary medication, off her blood pressure medication. She comes back in a month. The doctor says, you're perfectly fine. You must have been, this was a new doctor she hadn't been to before. You must have been misdiagnosed. And she said, I've been military brat. I was from doctor to doctor all through my life. I've been on thyroid medication since I'm 14, multiple tests over and over. And you're telling me I was misdiagnosed. I never had a thyroid problem? I'm sorry. It has to do with what I've done. And so she's maintained it. She's now in her 70s. She's 71, I think now. And she's doing phenomenally. And This is what it was. Just she focused on the blood sugar, but the things I teach to get people to get their blood sugar in balance helped her digestion, it helped her thyroid,
True.
it helped her immune system. And so we started there, because if we started more at the top, like, oh, you're perimenopausal, let's start with balancing your sex hormones. If the digestion's a mess, the adrenals are a mess, the blood sugar's out of balance, and you work just on the sex hormones, you're missing the root cause. You're just doing symptomatic relief, which is what bioidenticals and all the herbs are, just symptomatic relief if you don't address it. Like, why are those hormones out of balance?
I love it. And I love that example, because whether we're 110 pounds overweight or 25 pounds overweight, it's easy to be like, well, I'm stuck here. Like, this isn't going anywhere. And all my friends are like this too. But that's an amazing story. Like, she just went for it. She had this dramatic improvement in her health. And now at 71, I think you said, she's got her vitality.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing. So great.
Yeah. And it's so doable, right? So, and people that go through menopause, my menopause was, my periods got further and further and further apart, and then they stopped.
No symptoms for you.
I get colds, when I am in a drafty, but I have people like put the air conditioner on. I like it. I like to be warm. I really like to be warm. So I've said to people, I just wish could have a hot flash just so I can warm up.
That's funny.
But no, I've never had one. I've had night sweats. The only time I've ever had night sweats, but nothing to do with menopause, this was before menopause, was I was doing a juice cleanse. And it seems like on the third day of a fast or a juice cleanse, my body's like, I wake up in this sweat, like, and stinky sweat, which means I'm just eliminating toxins up the wazoo.
Yeah.
And I feel like, whoa, I crawl my way to the kitchen and get some juice to make it go away. But that's the only time I've ever had night sweats. And it's usually just that third day of a fast.
That's interesting. Yeah. And after childbirth too, you can have night sweats. I think you're coming down from such high hormone levels. It's so much to process. So
yes, it's that fluctuation and the imbalance, right? And a lot of women that, if you're talking about the postpartum and having those hormone imbalances, those, a lot of times that has to do with the person being in a situation where they don't have enough B vitamins to pull all that out. Their nutrients are out of balance, because it's so important to have enough B vitamins, B and magnesium, to just like, oh, where there's extra estrogen, let's just yank it out. Let's just get rid of it. And if we don't have that balance, then it's worse. And I've noticed that with women that are not even menopausal, where they have PMS, where when we get their B6 and their magnesium levels, oftentimes that clears up and get their diet.
Yeah, supporting that detox capacity. I was not a student of functional medicine when I was pregnant and postpartum, and I wish I had, but it spurred me into all this, because I was like, oh, I got some things to figure out here. You're never too late to learn.
Never too late to learn. It's never too late to learn.
It's so true.
65, people would say, oh, give up on it, you're never going to lose weight.
And just retire.
Just retire, go on the medication. What's one more medication? You're taking 3 already. What's the difference?
Yeah, great story. So you mentioned your blood sugar program. I'd love to hear about that resource. And I know that there are some practitioners watching and listening, and you have some great resources for practitioners. Can you talk about those two things?
Sure. Thank you. So my blood sugar balancing program is called the Sweet Spot Solution. And it's all about finding your sweet spot, that spot where your blood sugar is perfectly balanced and everything gets perfectly balanced, your energy, your brain fog. And it's a little different for each person. I do really well, more ketogenic type. I do well when my blood sugar is like 50, 60, 70. I do really well there because my body goes into fat burning. And actually my best blood sugar is usually between 60 and 70. That's when I'm not so starving, but and I don't get that craving for food when it's there because my body's managing it. But other people don't feel well there. So it's a matter of finding where that ideal spot is for them. And we take them through the process of those 5 lifestyle elements, and we take them through the process of balancing each one.
That makes so much sense. And you do the little Glucometer. Yeah. Yeah.
We have to learn it for themselves, because a lot of times people are eating what they think is a good diet, a quote unquote low glycemic diet, but there may be one or two elements in there that are raising their sugar, because everybody's unique. There may be one or two elements, like whenever they go visit their mother, their blood sugar goes up, right? Whenever they have to get their eyes checked, their blood sugar goes up. So it's a matter of learning those things. And it doesn't mean you're not going to go visit your mother or get your eyes checked, but you're going to learn how to calm yourself in moving into those situations so it doesn't raise your blood sugar, right? So we learn what foods affect it, what stresses, how sleep affects it, and we work at helping them to balance. And the results are phenomenal. We're just wrapping one of those up now. And I mean, people who have been diabetic for years and couldn't even get their blood sugars below 200 on medication are now experiencing blood sugars in the 80s.
Wow, that's great.
And that's for full-blown diabetics. The rest of the folks, and it's all a matter of how much they're willing to put into it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like a big learning experience for me in the last, even just 6 months, is like realizing that the problem isn't the problem. The problem is my stress response, and that's what I need to worry about, because the rest is just situation and blaming and da-da-da. Like yesterday I was upset about something, and I came home and started telling my husband, getting upset again. I was like, you know what? I can't talk about this right now. I can't get, it's bedtime. I can't get round up. So I just worked on giving that problem to the universe. We'll take care of it later. It doesn't need to be taken care of right now. And that's just been such a game changer for me to own that. And to just realize, what's most important is that I don't upset my blood sugar and my cortisol and stuff right now. That's going to give me a long life.
And you get that. It's like a biofeedback, right? You get that. Oh, look at that. I did it again. Okay, let me calm myself down. And as you're learning a new skill, you find yourself doing the old part and you catch yourself. You go, okay, I'm catching myself. And it gets better and better until it becomes automatic. Now, I'd like to say that it's totally automatic, that I never get upset about situations. But there are a few situations that still send me into that. And I figure out ways to deal with it. So if I'm upset because, somebody on my team did something, or, one of my kids did something, or whatever, I can then learn to dissipate it. So I do exercise. And this is a great thing to do. This is a great antidote to the stress, because what did we say? The blood sugar goes up. What do you do when you exercise? You burn sugar. So if I start to get stressed out about something and I teach people, do something, do squats at your desk, right? Or running up and down the stairs. For me, I like to go for a run. I don't always have time to do that in the middle of the day, but a couple of weeks ago, I got just really upset about something that happened that I thought it was unfair. And I was just ranting to my husband. I said, I'm just going for a run. So I went out the door and I started running, and I came back. He goes, oh, you feel better? I went, what do you mean? He goes, you were pretty upset when you left. I said, oh, it was? I didn't even remember.
That's awesome. And it's so naturally urged. You're like, oh, I got to move around. I got to do something about this. And it's that tiger thing, right? It's like, oh, I got to run from the tiger. Might as well literally run.
Might as well. I have a set of stairs here. I could just run. I have a 10-pound medicine ball. I grab it and I just run up and down the stairs, build up a sweat.
Awesome. Well, let's hear what you've got for practitioners, because you have such great resources.
Yeah. So when I started to do online programs and teach people how their body worked and really empower them to take charge, a lot of people in those programs were practitioners. And they'd say to me, can you do a program for practitioners? How do you know how to do this? I want to learn to do what you do. So I started a program for practitioners. So we have the Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology. And there we train practitioners in we have a blood sugar management program, which is about 3 months or so. We have a digestive system management program. And then we have our full-blown certification programs, a year-long foundations and a 2-year mastery program. And we go through all the different glands and organs and all the nutrients. We have a 25-hour module on micronutrients. We have a 25-hour module on food religions, which is all the different food plans and how do you pick and choose from each one to create the personalized approach for each person. We have a 20-hour on blood chemistry. So we have a lot of really in-depth information for practitioners to learn all these different thyroid module, reproductive hormone. There's 36 modules, so I'm not going to mention
Yeah.
But there's 6 modules of information that people can learn, but it's more than just information. It's me giving from my 25 years of clinical experience, how do you use this information? So we have calls, like probably 1 or 2 a week, where we get together and we go over cases and they ask me questions and I share from my cases and we just like pull it all together so they have clinical, practical experience.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I really recommend, if you're a practitioner wanting to learn more about what she's talking about and her style, check it out. And we will share that Hormone Elixir book for everyone. Definitely pick that up. It's really fun to make those little recipes, concoctions. I've made a few of them myself. Thank you so much, Ritamarie. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bridget.